which I think makes it the candor all the more terrific for us and for everybody sitting around the table. I guess the few quick things I wanted to say was one, of course, this is to some extent for me a trip down memory lane in terms of the challenges, and indeed I do think that, and I've said this before, I guess when I had my talk, is that there are certain similarities that transcend whatever foreign service you're in. Your foreign service life, I don't want to say a bubble because I think you get outside of it, but the foreign service life, whether you're the Chinese, the Russian, the Pakistan, the Indian, the US, whatever, there's certain realities. And so it did bring back a lot of memories in that sense. I appreciate a lot of things about what you said, including things that have been close to my heart. I don't know how successful I've been with the notion of pushing the envelope. That's one thing I think bureaucrats have to do. And it's tough sometimes when pushing the envelope is one. I think the people orientation, the connecting at a human level, that's one thing I don't know how successful I've been, but in every mission I've been in, that's certainly what I've tried to do. And even, I don't know if this would resonate with you or not, but sometimes 3-year assignment, 4-year assignment, you get a situation, a very human situation, and you're thinking, maybe that's why I was put on this earth to do that. And maybe that's crossed your mind as well, but it's like, okay, I'm a bureaucrat, I'm a diplomat, I've got, I've been privileged in many ways, but maybe, and this is often with a person at the very bottom of the pyramid, if you will, but it crosses your mind that this may be why I'm here, is to help in the situation. And so that kind of gives you some solace and maybe some strength as well. I guess a couple more things is a great story, because I'm looking around this table here. It may be apocryphal, but I think it was attributed to George Shultz, who was one of our Secretary of States. And the class, just heading out to the field, would be sitting around the table. The Secretary of State would have the 45 minutes or whatever. And his last question was, and what is your country? And everybody would go around the table, and I'm going to Bangladesh, I'm going to Argentina, I'm going to France, or whatever. And so everybody around the table, all the foreign service officers, and then he would end and say, your country is your country, the United States. And in that case, and of course in the Pakistan context, if they did that at the diplomatic academy, it'd be the same thing. And so I guess one of my points here was simply the primacy given to looking after the citizens of one country. Of course, there's many things. There's trade, there's diplomacy, there's security, et cetera, et cetera. But I think your talk gave real primacy to the Pakistan citizens. And I think that any foreign service, that has to be priority number one. And I think most diplomats, certainly in the U.S., and again, that story about George Shultz, I think, is a good illustration of that. What is your country? Ultimately, it's the citizens of your country that there's whatever you're representing, and I think you represent your country in a very good way. I guess the last two other quick things. One is, I will say, I think everybody can learn from each other. One of the intriguing things that's in the U.S. Foreign Service that I think is perhaps worth mentioning is that the U.S. does have, I don't know how many decades they've had it, you're probably familiar with it, but they have the Dissent Award for intellectual courage and dissent. And they have one for a entry-level person, they have one for a mid-level person, and they have one for a higher-level person. I don't know how often that's been emulated. I don't know how often it worked in Pakistan. It may be tough, but basically I should say that what it means is that any officer anywhere in the system can write a cable which has to be responded to by the Secretary of State. So, you do that circumspectly. You don't want to be the guy that's always firing off cables to the Secretary of State. But, maybe it's a 2 or 3 times in your career kind of thing, or maybe it's a once in your career that you might evoke that. So that was just an interesting thing. And I guess the last note, because I think the one thing that, was striking about your talk, and I think some of the people around the table picked up on as well, is the sort of people-oriented human approach that you mentioned. In the later part of my career, and again thinking about when you come to a new embassy, when you come to Oman, I started to evoke, I wouldn't do it earlier on, but later in my career, whether as an ambassador or a USAID mission director, I would evoke the quote, which maybe you've heard before, be kind to those you meet, for they too are involved in a great struggle. And I think that that's a real, I'm saying this circumspectly, but in public policy, I don't think you have to be ashamed sometimes to give a human perspective. And again, what it is, the fundamental point of this is empathy. Be kind to those you meet, for they too are involved in a great struggle. You also are involved yourself in a great struggle, which is why that's the basis for empathy. And then, of course, I can't help but say, even though we fall short too often, all of us, But I used to think that that was the greatest quote until I came to Forman, and then by love serve one another was the one that introduced into my vocabulary, which I think is a great precept, which I think builds on some of the things you said. So thank you very much. I know it's late, I maybe talked too long, but I really appreciate this sort of connection and this opportunity to hear your reflections on your foreign service life. So thank you.
All right, folks, thank you so much. And all of you have earned your tea, but before we move further, I do have to perform a ritual, so I was going to request the rector